It's heartbreaking and sad when you see the whole family suffers for life just because a single wicked family member committed evil deeds. Should Pablo Escobar be called famous or infamous? What he did is nothing we can take inspiration from. He earned billions, made enemies, broke laws, took countless lives, and committed heinous crimes. But what happened to his family after his demise? Do his sins still haunt them? In this video, we are going to talk about what happened to Pablo Escobar's family after 20 years he's gone. So take a deep breath, and here we start. Pablo Escobar is nothing short of a legend, a guy who at his peak controlled 80% of all cocaine sold in the United States, giving him the moniker King of Cocaine and rating him as the world's richest man according to Forbes magazine. He was married to Maria Victoria Henao and had 2 children, Juan Escobar and Manuela Escobar. If the persistent rumors are to be accepted, he had a slew of lovers, putting his marriage under strain. His misdeeds, however, went far beyond infidelity. As his riches and power grew, he became involved in a variety of horrific acts, like murders and assassinations and whatnot. He was even influential enough to have political contacts in Colombia. Escobar was shot and murdered in a police gunfight on December 2, 1993, in which he was pitted against a highly elite police unit established particularly to bring him down. Escobar left a lot behind after his death: his cocaine business, his homes, and most significantly, his family. Maria Victoria Henao Vallejo, his wife, was born in 1961. She first met Pablo Escobar when she was just 13, and she was certain she had met the love of her life at the time. And Maria still believes he was the love of her life after 17 turbulent years of marriage, which included drug trafficking, violence, and possible infidelity with several women. She still remembers wonderful times spent with Escobar with fondness. Though family holidays were not always easy for them, they became complex when she discovered the true nature of her husband's business and decided she didn't want to be his accomplice in crime. But her love for him was so strong that she decided to create a life with him on the outskirts of the law. It wasn't difficult for her to give up the enormously lucrative post of head of Escobar's drug enterprise after Escobar's death, preferring instead a calm existence for the rest of her family. Maria and her 2 children eventually left their homeland. Even so, it wasn't easy. She was denied asylum and tried to leave to Mozambique, Brazil, and Germany before being welcomed as a tourist in Argentina. Maria Victoria Henao Vallejo was renamed Maria Isabel Santos Caballero after that. For a few years, she and her family were able to live in peace until 1999. When authorities discovered that Maria Isabel Santos was Maria Victoria Henao, the famed Pablo Escobar's wife, they arrested her for money laundering in the year 2000. She and her son Juan Pablo were held captive for several months. Maria delivered a statement after her detention, claiming that she was being imprisoned in Argentina for being Colombian, to judge the ghost of Pablo Escobar and to convince the public that Argentina is battling drug trafficking. Authorities were eventually unable to connect her to any unlawful activities. So they were let go, and they realized that the whole guilty until proven innocent attitude wasn't the smartest way to deal with it. She remained out of the spotlight for over 2 decades before breaking her silence to publish Mrs. Escobar: My Life with Pablo, a book that shed light on both her and her renowned husband's personality. She still lives quietly in Buenos Aires, Argentina, with her children and grandkids. Juan Escobar, Escobar's son, described himself as adorable to his father. Pablo Escobar was a good man with him when he was at home, he said. He showed him a lot of affection, and that's how he wants to remember his father. They used to go to the poor areas in Colombia to aid people, and that was the father he knew at the time. Juan Pablo Escobar, who was born in 1977, changed his name to Sebastian Marroquin after arriving in Argentina, just like his mother. He's now an architect, designer, lecturer, and author, and he's been outspoken about his father, making the name change pointless. He's also likely to be resentful of the shift. You should have seen how he came up with the name Escobar Henao, which is a combination of his father's surname and his mother's maiden name. Pablo Escobar is face-printed on organic fabric pants and t-shirts in the Escobar Henao apparel brand. According to him, the venture aims to change the family's outlook to something more positive and tranquil. Sebastian has always been forthright when it comes to his father and family. He took issue with a Forbes story that cost his family's assets at $3 billion, claiming that it had caused him and his family irreparable harm. Multiple families, including himself, were blackmailed and kidnapped as a result of that story, and he avoided more than 9 kidnapping attempts. He also spoke out about the Netflix movie Narcos, which is based on his father's life as a drug lord kingpin, claiming that the facts on the film are both distorted and misunderstood because it glorifies his father's heinous acts. Sebastian most importantly wanted the public to understand that, despite his wealth, influence, and philanthropy, Pablo Escobar was responsible for the deaths of thousands of individuals and the devastation of millions of families' lives. That wasn't something to be proud of. Sebastian published Pablo Escobar, My Father in 2014, which portrayed the gentler and more private aspects of Pablo Escobar's life. He also contributed to the making of a documentary called The Sins of My Father. The film's message was that the Escobar era of violence had come to an end in the previous generation, contrary to the common notion that Juan Pablo would return to avenge his father's murder. This was, after all, a sequel to an action film. Sebastian was shown apologizing to the families who had been harmed by his father's murder and assassination. Sebastian was questioned in an interview why he had not returned to his homeland after so many years on the road. He explained to them that he had to wait 14 years after his father's death to say farewell to him due to threats. Everyone warned him that if he returned, they would kill him as well. He couldn't return to Colombia, so he had no choice but to stay in Argentina. Sebastian proceeded to talk openly about his father, not to polish up his myth, but to seek peace and reconciliation by publicly apologizing on his father's behalf. Manuela Escobar, Escobar's daughter, was the epitome of a daddy's girl. When her father was still living, it was widely assumed that he would go to any length for his daughter. Rather than denying his daughter's wish for a unicorn, he once requested his servants to staple horns and wings on a white horse's body just to make it look like a unicorn. He had a playhouse made for Manuela while he was in prison so that she could be closer to him. She, like the rest of Escobar's family, had a big dramatic adjustment in her life when Escobar died, but she was only 9 years old. When they moved to Argentina, she, like the rest of her family, changed her name. Juana Manuela Marroquin Santos is her new name. To say the least, life changed dramatically after her father died. She went from being the daughter of a drug lord who could practically burn money to stay warm in winter to barely making it into the middle class. She was able to go to public school like any other kid, and even though her life had become more solid since relocating to Argentina, she still didn't feel safe. When her mother and brother were arrested for money laundering, it didn't help matters. Even though she was pardoned because she was a minor, and even though she has never been accused of or even involved with any crime in her life, she nevertheless lives in constant fear of being tracked down or losing her family as a result of her father's misdeeds. This has resulted in her leading the most secluded life, especially when compared to her mother and brother, preferring to avoid the public and separate herself from the family's background. Manuela is a person about whom there is very little information. We do know that she has a public relations degree. As odd as it may be, it's also rumored that she has a son. However, that knowledge is only that. With rising panic and dread of being persecuted or losing her family, the media's quiet is ultimately for her benefit. She is said to have attempted suicide and suffered from depression on several occasions. Sebastian stated in an interview that she is undergoing psychological treatment. Hermilda de los Dolores Gaviria was Pablo Escobar's mother. She was a staunch supporter of her son until her death at the age of 89, 13 years after his death in the same Medellin neighborhood where he was murdered. There isn't a lot of information on her. We do know that even though her son was in charge of the world's greatest cocaine trade and was responsible for the murders of thousands of people, she refused to regard him as a criminal. Ruth Maria Escobar, Pablo's sister, may not be hitting the interview circuit or authoring many books, but she has been working to atone for her brother's actions since his death. She writes messages to the victims' graves, saying that she thinks about her brother's misery every day and is grieved to watch his ventures leave a cruel scar on her family and beloved country. She organizes community support activities and assists folks to absorb his ill-gotten money. Pablo Escobar's legacy is being felt today. His family isn't the only one who has had to cope with it. Having said that, the video for today has come to an end. In the comments section, let us know your take on the Escobar family and their current lifestyle. Also, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications bell to get more informative videos like this. Thanks for watching. We'll talk again shortly. Till then, peace.